Hi all, welcome to the Way Forward Talks with me, Amrita. And to mention about the Way Forward is a company where we are into career development and we are empowering people right from the young age of school to extreme professionals. Celebrating Startup Day, which is celebrated across India in the recent past, and it's a wonderful way to welcome startups and congratulate the startup owners. Today we have a great person in the startup fraternity, and really happy to welcome Mr. Alaap Dayal to the forum. And so thank you so much, Alaap, for coming on to the forum. Really happy to have you here.
Thank you, Amrita. Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure. I don't know about great, but I'm certainly trying. So thank you for that wonderful introduction. Please.
Yes. So Alaap is a engineer by profession from BITS Pilani, and he has empowered himself and grown himself as a wonderful entrepreneur, having a great company called PBO Plus, and it's into robotics and as well as consulting. And he will explain about it in further detail. So you can introduce about yourself and the company, Alaap.
Yeah. So PBO Plus is actually fundamentally a business process consulting firm. It works with different businesses in order to streamline processes. We were obsessed with the idea that systems and processes were missing in India, especially in the manufacturing sector. And so we started building certain models that would help manufacturing not only improve their processes, but while doing that, reduce their cost as well as improve the throughput of their machines. So that for implementing processes for the sake of process is also not valuable, especially for your customer who's an owner of a company. They would like a certain short-term return out of a process exercise, out of a process excellence and operational excellence exercise. So we combine both financial gains with process excellence as an intervention. And part of that, or an extension of that, is also to do certain automations. After basic processes have been implemented in an organization, basic, what you call operational excellence techniques have been implemented. Beyond that, we start implementing automation. That is where the robotics part of the business comes in. And besides that, of course, I'm part of Bharati Inc., which is a wedding planning company. The reason I was part of that was, of course, because I believe weddings are one of the most chaotic processes in the world. And for me, because I came from that background of streamlining processes for manufacturing, I really believe that you could introduce that to the wedding industry as well. And so did my partners. So it felt appropriate to be part of that team as well. So that's pretty much what we do in a very short summary. And yeah, ultimately, that's what these companies are about.
Wonderful, wonderful. So having multifaceted businesses is really a key. I think your multifacetedness is shown in this, the way you handle all these things together. That's wonderful. So a success mindset is needed for a good entrepreneurship. Going through the whole journey of entrepreneurship, you need a good success mindset, which develops mostly from the early ages. So how did you nurture this since your school and college times?
Well, I think, you're not going to like some of my answers because I usually think a little bit opposite to, the system. So I would say that the problem is that I don't look at the world as a success mindset. I actually don't look at things as success and failure. The problem that happens is that with traditional education that we grew up with, there was a lot of emphasis on very clearly defining people into boxes of successes and failure. And when you do that, you end up creating people who either completely believe that they are nothing and that they are incapable of performing or contributing to the universe around them, or you create people who believe that pedantic intelligence, which is basically bookish intelligence, is the only way to succeed in life. And therefore, they might be toppers of classes, but they don't have the ability to innovate. So if you ask me, I don't look at it as success mindset. I think more of it as an iterative mindset. So if the right way to understand would be that how do you learn the iterative mindset? Formal education, I don't think directly contributed to that mindset to me, but certainly being in my school as well as college and constantly questioning authority, constantly questioning rules, and constantly trying to think outside the box, and then trying to view what exists outside it. I think that really drives that iterative mindset. It opens up to experimentation, and it allows you to kind of be okay with uncertainty, right? So that really did help. And I'm in that way thankful to our schools and colleges that at least I was part of, that they never discouraged it. They never formally discouraged it and said that, oh, just because this person is thinking the other way or thinking differently, that they shouldn't be part of that school or college. So I was allowed to exist in that, which I think was wonderful. I was allowed to have people around me, and I had people around me who appreciated that. So I think that has been very useful in the way I have understood success in any form eventually. So I would say those things were very important.
Mhm. Wonderful,
Yeah.
wonderful. So that's wonderful. Actually, like expect the unexpected gives you a very open-mindedness to the world that
Yeah.
we.
And unfortunately, the formal education doesn't um, emphasize on that. It
True,
doesn't tell
true.
you that reality doesn't behave in this kind of, oh, success ho gaya fir
Mhm.
failure ho gaya, agar aap fail,
Mhm.
if you fail, then you've miserably
Yes,
failed, now you'll remain a failure. These boxes cannot define who you are and how you find success in life. You have to keep iterating, you have to keep experimenting and trying.
correct.
And that's where you eventually find moments of successes that you can rejoice on and build on.
True.
So those were certainly, I don't say directly through formal education, but kind of existing in it, but being outside it at the same time really helped. So
Wonderful.
that was useful. Yeah.
Great, great, wonderful. So coming towards your venture PBO Plus, so you are doing multiple cross-functional projects, and you're helping many ventures, and you're also into Bharati. So what is the key tip for you to make your team efficient? What was the thing you normally tell your team?
Okay. So I think obviously many people say this, hiring is obviously one very good, important process of this entire thing. If you get hiring right, you have won half the battle, whether you like it or not.
Mhm.
So improving the hiring process as much as you can by having appropriate tests, by ensuring that different people with different perspectives within your organization are interviewing the person, so that you're not the only one who believes that, okay, I can hire the best people, because
Mhm.
that's never possible. Interestingly, we did a research in my own research on myself over 2 years, whether I had the capability to hire good people, and I myself only had a 50% success rate. So it was practically like flipping a coin if I hired a person and whether they were good or not. So somewhere, as far as hiring is concerned, one should not look at it as oh, this person knows how to hire in the best way. There should be a process in place for it.
True.
Besides getting hiring right in at the beginning, making efficient teams, if you ask me, is I never start by assuming that people can change. So most people believe that, oh, you can transform and you can get better in life and you can do this and all of that. I
Mhm.
actually assume that people have certain strengths and weaknesses, and you can combine strengths and weaknesses. And it's better to work in configurations rather than wasting energy on improvement. So
Okay.
what I mean by that simply is that, let's say there's one person who's behaviorally, very execution oriented. So you know that this person will execute well, but is not great at, let's say, planning. Then you have one person who's very planning obsessed, high level person,
Mhm.
can look at an overall strategy, set a vision for the company. So I don't spend time trying to train the execution guy on how to become a visionary. right? I tend to kind of combine both of them and say that, okay, this is the outcome we are looking for, and you have this strength and this is your weakness, and this particular person has that strength and that weakness. So let's work together on that. And that has really worked well for me. So
Wonderful.
assume that, fundamentally assume that people don't change that easily unless they have a very massive impact in their lives, and then kind of work backwards to design the team. As
Nice.
far as rewards and recognitions is concerned, when building efficient teams, there's this famous line by Chanakya. He says that whenever you're rewarding or punishing someone,
Mm-hmm.
it should, or punishing in the sense that if you're saying that, okay, this person hasn't delivered, giving feedback, then the right reward must be given for the right action. So an appropriately correct reward must be given for an appropriate action, and an appropriately negative feedback or criticism should be given for um, the negative action. So I believe that you have to find a balance in rewarding people. If you over reward, you're going to
Mm-hmm.
screw up miserably,
Mm-hmm.
because they'll get used to that. They'll start believing that everything is reward based,
Mm-hmm.
outcome based instead of process based.
Okay.
And that's why you have to stagger it well, rewards and
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
recognitions,
True, true,
you
true.
know. And another part of it is that, and I love this is that Sundar Pichai model of
Mm-hmm.
working, which is that rather than telling people to enjoy and celebrate a goal, really kind of try to make people enjoy the process of doing something,
True.
because that lasts so much longer. It
Yes.
lasts so much longer than just giving someone a reward and saying ki acha chalo ab aap. They just eventually, their motivation just drops. So
True.
I try to encourage both within myself as well as within my team how to
Mm-hmm.
enjoy the process of doing something,
Mm-hmm.
rather than waiting for a calendar date to be happy.
Okay.
You know what I mean? कि
Yes.
जब
Yes.
कॉन्ट्रैक्ट मिलेगा तब हम खुश होंगे, जब वो रेवेन्यू फिगर हिट होगा तब then we'll be happy. I don't think you can last. You'll burn out as an individual if you did that.
Very true.
So,
Yes.
so my mindset is enjoy the daily, and find a way to extract as much positivity from the journey rather than the goal itself. And it's hard. It's very hard, and I try to do it myself, but that's what I believe. And I think
Wonderful.
those are the things that have worked
Great, great,
in,
great.
in places that I believe.
Wonderful. So I actually believe whenever I start writing, I always get to the mindset of, journey is more important than the end goal. So I can see that
Yeah,
in the way you say it.
it
Wonderful.
really is. It's actually very scientifically proven that there were experiments done on humans as well as rats in Stanford, where
Mm-hmm.
when they were given rewards, their motivation actually immediately dropped
Mm-hmm.
when it was completely goal-oriented reward systems. And
Okay.
when they were expected to just simply enjoy the journey, they actually performed better.
That's
So
nice. Wonderful. That's
so
a great
so there's a
input.
scientific backup to that.
Great, great. So
Yeah.
coming to one spontaneous question that like as a team, there's this personality types like MBTI and all those things which come in play, where you can
Hmm.
actually segment the team, understand whether you're having a similar mindset people and bring in different perspectives. So do you
Yeah,
believe in that?
I really do. Psychometric tests are incredible. I think they're very useful in being able to judge people. I wish I could have implemented it. I always wish, and I keep telling my team to implement it in a much more deeper way. But
Mm-hmm.
I know many organizations that it has been useful for, and I think one should always try that.
Wonderful.
The reason why I believe in it is because it allows you to take something that most people believe is unpredictable, which is
Mm-hmm.
people, and
Mm-hmm.
then at least give it some form of framework and structure so that you can at least deal with it, try to solve it somewhere, and then
Yes.
work on it as an experimental process.
Very
So
true. Yes.
so anything that can be put into a structured thinking can only be solved,
Mm-hmm.
and psychometric tests allow you to do that.
Great, great. That's
Yeah.
amazing. Wonderful. So moving towards now we have spoken about personal. Now moving towards the startup as it. is this. So the startup ecosystem in the country is very strong and it's building really, well. So how was the support for your startup and how is it going?
I had no support. I had when we started. See, when we started 8 years ago, 9 years ago, there was no support. Honestly, you were kind of thrown into 12 feet deep pool, and you were to figure it out. The world has changed from there, of course,
Yes.
hugely. Today, starting a company is much more easier. Running it is much more easier. And in some way, you have to thank our government for it. I think they have tried to encourage it. Um, where I believe we are still lacking is that there is still no system to help people take more risks in the startup community. See, we are right now marketing startups. You have Shark Tank that is coming in saying, "Are ye startup karo, wo startup karo," all of that.
Yes.
It's a great sales pitch. But what nobody is preparing entrepreneurs for is the pain that one has to go through.
True.
What nobody is realizing is that most startups, almost 85% of them shut in the first year. So how do you encourage people to keep building on those ideas? How do you create a system that doesn't punish you for failing? Please understand, if your startup shuts down, if it gets bankrupt, our community will start looking down upon you. Somebody had a startup, they failed, so bad, poor guy, poor girl. So how do you create an ecosystem that supports um, failure in startups and still encourages people to keep trying?
Yes.
And yet at the same time teach entrepreneurs how to live a minimalistic life. The reason why most startups fail is because they can't handle their money. If you ask, how do you handle working capital? Uh, how do you not spend crazily? These kind of educations haven't been provided, but they are starting to get provided, which is a great thing, right? So I was seeing this guy, the owner of Zerodha. He started a company, um, which educates young people. My sister, she's in class
Okay.
12th, 11th. All of these guys should be educated on how to manage money. You
True.
see,
True.
we were
Yes.
never taught that. We've
Very well.
we've taught ourselves that through failure, through pain. So if there is a support that is required, which is happening, is of that education. And I think it's growing and it's a great thing. And hopefully in the next 5 to 10 years, there are going to be more and more people who are going to do it. So I'm very positive about it. Unlike all my other answers, I'm not negative about it. Uh, but the time where we started, it was all about just kind of hit and try.
True.
You
True.
figured out as you went. So that's how it is.
Yes, and I think
And
COVID being a little bit negative with the the other aspect, but in terms of the startup, it has brought a lot of changes. There are many startups which have just jumped in during the COVID period, and it's growing further, right?
yeah, and yeah, absolutely. I think it spawned a lot of opportunities also. You can't deny that.
Mhm.
Um, where I do
True.
feel is that,
Yes.
see, starting something, like I said, startup is easy, sustain up
Yes.
is the difficult part, right? So
True.
uh, you can still start up companies, you can make it easier, but hopefully we can also teach these
Very true.
entrepreneurs how to sustain these organizations in a better way over the
True.
years. I hope they work on that.
Wonderful. I think that's a really good perspective you brought in. That's nice.
Thank you.
So, moving on, like as you're having Bharati and you're having PBO Plus, it's like two different ideologies brought up together. So,
Mhm.
when do you know as a business person, when like a person is in startup and they have like settled for a level, when do you know that we can venture out into something else new? When to start a new vertical or so?
First of all, that's a great question, honestly. And it's been a experiment and a discovery. I know for a fact that you should only venture into other businesses when you have very clear and committed partners. Number one. So that should be one of the biggest indicators whether you should venture into something. because if you're venturing into something, you're dividing your time. So obviously you need someone with you who's fully committed to that idea, and they should be okay with your time division, because in place of that time you might bring in advice or money or something else, right? As value to the partnership.
Correct.
So having a clear and good committed partner is one time. So as soon as you have that, you can. Second thing I would say is, obviously, when your cash flow is good, if you have the money, if you know that you have extra capital lying around and you can diversify, then it's okay to do small experiments and see if other verticals can be formed. Although infamously, there have been many companies that have shut down because of bad diversifications. There are many great examples of that, where Kingfisher, for example, was a great example of that. So many companies have suffered because of that. So it's kind of, it's a small experiment that you have to keep conducting. And I always say, if unless your home base is not stable, do not try to venture into other verticals. So build cash flow there, then have the comfort, and then also have a partner who's fully committed. And finally, of course, it should be something that is similar. And what I mean by that is that, if let's say you're like, for example, for me, I am into process consultancy, right? So for me, getting into a wedding planning business is a very natural diversification. It's not completely out of the blue.
Okay.
Only the industry is changing, but the methodology of solving the problem, you're ultimately still doing a project. You ultimately still need processes in order to streamline something.
True.
So there's a lot of what you call synergy between what I was diversifying in.
True.
So I think the third point would be that it should be in line with some of your strengths.
Okay.
So that will also be useful to diversify.
Nice. That's wonderful. Great. So going on to the next question, networking and negotiation are two important skills, or two eyes to a business. So do you agree with this, and how do you think one can empower themselves in this area?
Yeah, of course. I mean, see, they are important, networking and negotiation, like I told you. I mean, negotiation is simply a hard learned tool. If it's simply by doing, if you ask me. And there are certain rules. I think there are some great books that are on negotiation that people can learn from. Never Split the Difference is a great book. Again, you can pick that up at any time. It tells you about certain techniques you can use. So I think it's a learned science. It's a practice science. It comes to you every day. It comes from failure. So you have to do more of it and place yourself in difficult negotiations situations, because people hate negotiations, right? Like, people would rather just want key, or it's something that we naturally detest as human beings.
True.
So the only way is through it, is to place yourself in those kind of difficult situations and then see whether you came out winning. And there is one fundamental rule to negotiation, which is that if you're the person who's willing to walk off, you'll always win the negotiation. So as long as you have that ability, if you have that leverage, you're most likely going to come out winning. As far as networking is concerned, I think you should be shameless. People have too much emphasis on, oh, can I say this? Oh, can I message? Oh, should I say, talk to them? Oh, should I ask for help? Just do it. Just ask for help, because people are exactly looking for the same thing. It's not like the other person on the other end doesn't want to find a new opportunity. It's not like it's not like they're going to come out and say, oh, how dare you message me, or how dare you ask me. And if they say no, you move on in life. It's as simple as that. I don't think you should keep such kind of qualms. These are all structures and qualms built by society, that, oh, you should be, you know, uh, you shouldn't reach out unless people don't reach out. Don't talk to people. I don't believe in all of this. I just message, and you can reject me as much as you want. But I continue to persist. And I think any business developer, any entrepreneur should be that way.
Yes.
You got a business. My father had this great line. He said that an entrepreneur doesn't have a mustache. He said an entrepreneur ki mooch nahi hoti. You don't, get arrogant and egotistical about, oh, I'm not going to be the first one. How are they going to feel? Such feelings should be eliminated. They are all driven by ego, and ego shouldn't exist in the process of doing business, if you ask me.
True.
And only then can you be successful. So they are very important, but most people seem to be very scared by them. So I think people should avoid being scared. That's how it is.
Wonderful. Nice.
Yeah.
Yes, superb. So just one quick question about the investor and the vertical part we were just discussing. When do you
Yeah.
think should one business go for a venture capitalist? When do we go into another person asking for money?
Oh, I am the wrong person to ask this question because I have never believed in uh, venture capitalism,
Okay.
venture capitalists, and I would say venture capitalism in that sense. But uh, I would say that, you see, I think venture capitalists are basically people who push your push your idea to greater heights. I would probably approach a venture capitalist in the same way as approaching a customer.
Mhm.
The only thing that I always fear is that how much control are you willing to let go of your business? How much are you willing to work for someone
Mhm.
and their money? So there are certain constraints that come with venture capitalism, and so you should be very careful with whether or not you should go for it. There is a lot of um, talk around this whole Shark Tank and that whole Startup India thing where
Mhm.
they keep saying take money from other people. I
Yes.
don't know. I have always believed you can bootstrap really well. You can take
Mhm.
the money, you know, build the idea, see where the profitability comes. And if
Yes.
you have that profitability in place, and if you have that kind of fundamentals in place where you have got a good product and market connect, then I think venture capitalism can really help.
Okay.
The venture capitalists can really help, where you can reach out to them and say, listen, I think I've got this product market connect really
Mhm.
down well. I
Mhm.
believe this is a profitable model. Why don't you fund this in a way so
Okay.
that we can accelerate this process and
Okay.
really spread it? Where I disagree with a lot of startups is that I don't understand this burn money to make money model.
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
Sometimes I'm shocked when I ask people working in startups and they say we don't even talk about profits. I'm like, where the hell do you guys come up with such ideas? Yeah, or you don't talk about profits in a business. It's like line one, chapter one of business, which is that
Yes.
how do you make it profitable before you make it scalable?
Correct.
So I don't know. I don't understand. Make it scalable first, then we'll talk about profit later. So that's the mindset I come from. However, I respect it when somebody feels like, okay, having that kind of capital can really accelerate the successful model that they've created. So they should only approach venture capitalists at that time.
Mhm.
Um, and I think that would be very useful. And if I had a venture capitalist as part of my business, I would very clearly evaluate their strengths and weaknesses so that I know that they are bringing in very clear values besides just money. So, for
Nice.
example, if my business lacks marketing or lacks promotion or lacks advertising, I would get someone who has that kind of connects. Or if my business lacks, let's say, B2B
Mhm.
connects with other businesses that can be potential customers, I'd like to have someone who has connects in that. So, go for venture capitalists beyond just the money,
True.
and that would certainly be very useful. You know,
Wonderful.
that's how it is.
That's wonderful. Nice. So finally coming towards like as a founder or a startup, what are the three main points or main key characteristics a person should have while they are starting in the startup system?
I would say the most difficult thing you have to work at as an entrepreneur, as a CEO, as anyone is how do you manage your mental health
Hmm.
with the failures that occur in the process of achieving success.
Mhm.
Okay. And this seems like a very small thing, but this is the toughest thing to go through as an entrepreneur, is that how do you first learn to detach yourself from the successes and failures of your business, detach your mental health from it. And it's something that I work on every day. I've been in the business world for more than practically 15 years now, and still there are days where the uncertainty gets to me. So the most difficult skill that one should work on is this, to realize that we are all here for a limited time period, that it's okay. I shouldn't be completely defined if I fail once or two times, or if one of my companies shuts off, or if it doesn't work. So coming back from it, the ability to rise from failure is extremely important. Secondly, I would say proactive relentlessness. Just go at it. The- Show up every day. Just show up every day is so important in running a company. And you know, so even if I always say this, in India, there's this culture of all, either you're a 1 or a 5. Like Amazon ratings are always 1 or 5. There's nothing called 2.5. There's no average day. There's no
Mhm.
average product in India. Either you're a bad product or a great product. So, but in real life, it's okay to have an average day. The wrong thing is not to show up.
Mhm.
So showing up every day and being consistent with the process of the work that you're doing, I think that's something that I would say is the second big skill that founders should work on and startups should work on. And finally, like I said, part of these two things is systems thinking. Systems thinking basically says that the problem is not in the person. A lot of our problems stem from judging ourselves and judging other people, not realizing that human beings will continue to remain variables. It's better to address processes and systems and solve them in that manner. Ask questions like, which step went wrong? How can I prevent that from happening? By assuming that the person will fail at it. When you start thinking like this, you're able to solve problems at a physics level, which I think is very, very important for any entrepreneur who's started a business and is working on a business. So those would be the three major things
Wonderful.
I would say.
So, I mean, I
Yeah.
think it's a very elaborate answer and it's a very philosophical
Yeah.
answer also. I see a lot of philosophy.
Yeah.
Wonderful, actually. So it gives a lot of,
Yeah. I think
perspective towards having a 360-degree personality so that, you grow as a complete entity rather than just, being in one direction. Yes.
absolutely. Well, you need that, right? You need that to remain motivated, to remain consistent. It's
True.
important to be able to understand it holistically. Otherwise, you'll have one failure and then you'll suddenly like start judging yourself and start, not realizing that it's iterative. So that's
Yes.
how it is. Yeah.
Nice, nice, nice. Great. So I think that brings us to the end of the interview. So your final comments, suggestions, and calling for startups. What is your
Oh, okay.
advice to them?
Wonderful. First of all, Amrita, thank you so much. You were
Thank you for
so
yeah.
kind to bring me on this platform, and I think you're doing an incredible job. So proud of the work that you're doing. Please continue this,
Thank
and
you.
I'm sure you're going to be great at it. I think my only advice I always give is that give something time. I mean, hold on. Build an idea, give it time. I always have a 7-year rule to think to businesses. Unless you don't spend a solid 7 years doing something consistently, don't tell me that you started up a company. You really haven't. So give something time and effort. Only then will you reach a point and discover where you are different
Hmm.
and what your customer is willing to pay for. Don't get married to this short-term success that people keep selling on Instagram and LinkedIn, that, oh, you start up and then you suddenly make money and then that is what life is, and then you're like, then you retire. These are all um you know what you call algorithm based foolish dreams that people keep selling.
Hmm.
This is not how reality works. When you start a business, you take an idea, you nurture it, you discover what your customer respects you for, is willing to pay you for. You make changes, you pivot, you know. So it's a continuous journey, and it's a long journey to go through. So give it that kind of commitment, and only then follow through. And I really believe that being an entrepreneur and starting a company is a fundamental mindset. It's a fundamental change in the way you approach life. Because when you do, you are committing to something for life. It's like a marriage. And in marriage, you just don't quit on the first fight. You don't quit on the first major failure. You work on it, you communicate, you change, you adapt, you do better, you make better decisions. So as long as you're willing to do that, I think it will be very, very useful for both yourself and the community around us, and this country for that matter. So that's my advice.
Wonderful, wonderful. Really, really, we are thankful from TWF for taking off so much time, I think, on a weekend. And thank you so much, Alaap, for giving your insights, and wishing you and PBO Plus and Bharati a wonderful journey in the startup, and happy Startup Day to you.
Pleasure, Amrita. Thank you so much. Keep shining, doing this wonderful work. A great again talking. Thank you. Take care.
Thank you so much. Have a
Bye.
great day. Bye.